Hello and welcome to this game review. So this was a game from the Benoni, but there weren't any real Benoni ideas as the position became chaotic like at the start of the game. So when we want to analyze some kind of typical middle game ideas from typical middle game structures, we should analyze games in which the structure wasn't dramatically changed right at the beginning, right? And in this one, we started with the kind of normal Benoni, and white just went f4 and e5, which is possible to do, and black should know what he is doing here. But of course, in opening principles, this shouldn't really work for white, because he is only pushing pawns. His king is in the center, and no pieces are developed. So black should be able to punish this with kind of natural moves. So here, black has to understand that if he gets his king into safety, and if he develops some pieces, he will be winning because white is completely overextending here. And if black gets developed, white's development will not really be in time to defend all of these weaknesses. So here the main move is kind of knight fd7, and white has a couple of ideas here, the main one being knight b5 to take here. But here this is considered quite good for black. For example, after this, white can continue sacrificing pawns, but generally black should be fine after rook d8, king f8, king g8. His king is fine, the center is quite weak, so black has no problems. Instead, d takes e, which is also playable, and knight fd7 and e6. So white has to play e6 as there's no other real move here, and black decides on queen e7, pinning the pawn, but it turns out that this is simply too weak. And why it is too weak, this just comes down to concrete evaluations and concrete calculation. So instead, black should have weakened the pawn on e6 with the idea to simply play knight f6. And now in this endgame, even though white has somewhat of an initiative, this pawn on e6 is extremely weak. Black is almost finished with developing, and here white is kind of fine by developing very quickly with castle and queenside, but black should also not have too many problems. If he gets to connect his rooks, he will be a pawn ahead. But objectively, probably white has some kind of initiative here with his very quick piece play. But this was the better choice. After queen e7, knight f3, and castles, it seems that black is out of the woods, but it turns out that these pawns are way too strong. And after bishop g5, firstly, if we play f6, then this pawn is now not weak anymore, and white can just move away, and he has two connected passed pawns. He is close to finishing development, so white is winning. So instead we would have to play bishop f6. If we move the queen, for example, and after knight b5, the queen is in very big danger of getting trapped. So again, bishop f6 is kind of forced. And now if white exchanges and now continues with bishop c4, this will be very good for white because black's king is now weakened due to the not having the bishop here. And for example, after fe and castles, even if black continues like this, white just has better development and he has a very strong attack against his king. And here the engine even suggests that the game is over as white has +4, for example, like this. And the natural rook ae1, we can see how all the pieces for white are developed and very active, while black has not been in time. And sooner or later some concrete calculation will have to happen for white to win the game, maybe with knight e5 or something, but the position is quite hopeless. So instead bishop c4 is kind of fine as well, but only as long as white holds on to his pawns and gets developed quick enough. But now black takes, and white castles. Though this is already a concrete mistake, here again white had the option of developing with tempo. And as a general rule, if you can develop your pieces with a gain of time, you should be doing this. And here white did not do this. And again, after bishop f6, for example, something like this variation, maybe just castling here, and black would again be in real trouble. White also has ideas of d6, as well as taking here, and black should not be in time to finish his development. But after castles, now knight b6 is a very good move, getting the knight out of the bad square, allowing the bishop to participate, and doing it all with tempo as the bishop is now attacked. So now black has some good ideas. After d6, queen e8. Here black is still worse, even though he is a pawn ahead, because this pawn is very strong, and again, these pieces are not developed. So if black is in time to develop, he will be doing very well. Here, objectively, white should play something like bishop e2, and as black develops, black has the weakness on c5, which is kind of white's only chance here. And if he gets this pawn, the material will be equalized, and white will be better due to this passed pawn. Instead, white plays bishop b5. After bishop d7, now black attacks the bishop, which means white will not gain any more time, and now he has lost a tempo, after which black has one extra move, so now he is doing very well. And again, white's only chance is to take this pawn. After bishop e3, there's no one defending it, so black will have to give it up. After knight b5, here there is a threat of knight c7, but black defends very actively with knight e5, and now there is no threat anymore. This pawn is starting to become a weakness, as it is blockaded and white is not really finishing his development. He has moved the bishop a little bit back and forth, the knight has gone to b5 for no reason. So now black is already better, and this is what happens in such situations. If white doesn't use his short-term advantages of development, then in the long term, black has a pawn advantage, and also he has a target here. So bishop c4, a6, and now some pieces are traded. Black develops the rook through the a file, and here rook f5 happens, but maybe this is not very useful. After bishop e4, the rook is on a kind of strange square. Instead, probably black should think about how to develop this rook and think of a real plan here. Of course, there's only 6 minutes and this is a rapid game, so there's not that much time to think. But probably if black picks up this pawn, then the game should be more or less over. And one way to do this is to play rook a6 and next knight d4, cutting off the queen, and then black will be able to take this pawn. After rook f5, here the rook goes to a strange square, and white now has decent compensation, as this rook is badly placed. Here g4, rook h3, king g2, but this is a bit too slow. Black is able to get rid of his bad rook to exchange here, and he plays queen f8, which is possible. At this point, we only have 1 minute left, so there's not that much to analyze, as there was no time to analyze during the game anymore. But generally, black is winning because he can just take this rook, and now he will have 2 pawns up, and he will need to consolidate the position. One way to do this is to exchange queens, and another way to do this is to exchange some pieces over here, for example knight d4, and here we can play bishop c6, and the weak king will start to tell. This pawn is not really relevant, and basically white is lost because of the weak king. But queen f8 is also kind of fine. Bishop g3, bishop a1, and now knight d4, everything is going up to plan. And here black finds the nice fork on knight c2, because this rook is hanging with check. Black is not going to lose his rook on a8. So this happens. And now after rook a2, of course, black is completely winning, and we need to find a way to win this. The best way to win this position probably is to finish with checkmate or trade queens, as a queen trade will of course give a completely winning endgame. Not only is black an exchange up, but also there's these 2 connected fast pawns. So to not win this was quite unfortunate. So queen b8 is played. Probably the queen should be a bit more centralized. In general, queens prefer the center of the board. And here after queen f6, black can put the queen over here and start pushing his pawns. Rook a1 is also a threat, so there's probably no real way of saving white. Queen b8, c4, of course this is all winning. Here there was a fork here, but instead queen a7 happens, and black doesn't really find a good way to win. Queen f6 and queen d8, the queen has moved around quite a bit. Now bishop e5, and black does have some kind of small problems with the king eventually, so we should be kind of careful. Here black again has certain winning ideas. One of them is to put the rook on d5 to attack g5, d6, and to protect b5 as well, and then he can start pushing his pawns, for example like this, rook d1, rook d5, and white can't really make any progress. For example, if they try to give checkmate, we also always have queen f8, which will also start our own attack, and the rook is behind the passed pawn, so it will never queen. and black is winning. Instead, rook g1, which is a natural move, but now bishop f6 is played, and here black should still be fine after queen c8 or queen e8, moving the attacked queen, but after bishop d7 and queen a8, it seems that white has enough counterplay here. After bishop e7 there is mate threatened, so after e5, queen f8, king e6, here black would be winning, but white is not forced to do this. It seems that he has some kind of perpetual check with queen f3, so the position is quite chaotic, but it makes sense that when white's bishop and pawn start activating, then he will have actual compensation. So maybe bishop f6 was not very useful to allow, and instead this tension should have been alleviated. Rook a7 works as well, but seems a bit passive. But okay, here the problem is white is not recapturing, right? And after queen e6, we have lost the queen, so this basically happened due to time pressure. So this is probably the first thing to work on. We shouldn't be on such low time after the opening. And for this, of course, we should know our openings quite well so that we don't have to spend time right at the beginning. But also, we should analyze our time usage and try to understand where exactly it went. For example, here, black kind of survived the opening with 9 minutes, but then every move was kind of slow, and 1 minute per move will not allow us to play so many moves, right? And up until this point, everything was fine. Black was winning and probably should have found the plan of taking the pawn on d6. So this was quite a chaotic game, and generally there weren't really any middle game ideas or plans, as simply the statics and dynamics of the position dictated that white should have played very actively and concretely to make use of his strong pawns and early initiative, while black, of course, has won a pawn right here, and then he just has to stabilize and get developed, which successfully happened, though later we lost due to time pressure. So maybe I would suggest playing with longer time controls if time pressure is an issue, or if you want to continue with this time control, try to play a bit faster in the opening.